Okay, today I'm going to share my recipe for St. Louis spare ribs that I do out on the smoker. The first thing I've done to get the ribs ready is cut them out of the packaging, wiped them off with a paper towel, and here I'm removing the membrane that's on the back of the ribs. The best way I've found to do that is to take a butter knife under one of the bones on the end and just pry it up so to where you can grab it with a paper towel, which helps you grip it, and just hopefully it tears off in one big sheet. I haven't done much trimming to these ribs, just cleaned up any of the thick areas of fat, and that's pretty much all the prep work involved. The next step is to get the rub onto our ribs, and I'm just using a barbecue rub. It's Killer Hogs barbecue rub. There's a ton of really good rubs you can buy. This is one that I like. It's pretty easy to even make your own. There's a ton of good recipes for homemade barbecue rubs. But to get the rub to stick to the ribs, I like to use yellow mustard as a binder. You definitely don't have to use a binder. You could just put the rub directly on the meat, but I find with the mustard it really helps it stick, and it helps you develop a good bark on the outside of the rib, which is something you want. So I put a pretty light coating on the back side of the ribs. Then when we get them flipped over, put a bit more on the meat side. Just want to give it a pat to help it stick and help it set. And same thing on the meat side. You just want to put a little thin coat of yellow mustard and a pretty good dose of barbecue rub. Once the rub's set on the ribs, these will sit out with the rub on them for about a half an hour, just enough time to go outside and get the coals lit for the smoker. And that helps the rub work on the meat a little bit. It'll get kind of tacky. It'll pull some moisture out of the ribs, which will help them cook more evenly. To cook the ribs, I'm going to use my offset charcoal smoker. I'm going to be using a chimney to get our coals lit here. It takes about 20 minutes and they'll be ready to go. I'll add them to the firebox. We're going to try to cook between 250 and 275. So you could do this on any grill or smoker. You just want to hold that temperature. You could even do it in your oven. So the ribs will go in the smoker like this for about 2 hours just to get some smoke and flavor on them, and then we're going to wrap them. And I'll show you that process after they've been on for a couple hours. Okay, the coals are ready to go, so I'm going to get them dumped into the firebox. I'm going to push this in, close it up. There's the ribs ready to go on the smoker. And after I put the ribs on is when I'll add 2 chunks of cherry wood to the firebox to give the smoke some flavor. I also have a half of a sweet onion that I usually like to add to the firebox as well, just because it smells really good. I don't know that it does much more than that, but the ribs will sit for about 2 hours. We'll check them and see what they're looking like and see if it's time to wrap. Okay, the ribs have been on for 2 hours and they're looking like they're ready to wrap, so we're going to be getting that process going here in a minute, and I'll show you how that works. Alright, the ribs have been on for 2 hours now. I'm going to get them ready to wrap. So I have 2 pieces of foil tore off here. There's butter on there. I'm going to add to that brown sugar. A little bit more of the same rub from before. Honey. ribs. Go meat side down. One little run of barbecue sauce. Wrapped up nice and tight. We're going to go back on the same way with the meat down. Now we'll just maintain that same temperature, and we'll check them after an hour. Okay, so the ribs have been wrapped for about an hour and a half. And checking them here, you can see the bones are starting to draw back on the bottom side, and they feel very soft and very tender. It's a good indication that they're almost done. Give them about 20 more minutes, and then we'll check them again. Okay, so the ribs are ready here. I have them in some aluminum foil to make it easy to glaze them and get them back on the smoker for just long enough for the glaze to set, about another 20 minutes or so. So what I'm going to do now is take some barbecue sauce, and you could use whatever your favorite is, any kind of work, and just brush it on the top of the rib. You don't need a ton of it, just a thin coat. I'll brush that onto both racks. Then the last step will be to add just a little bit more rub, just for a last little finishing touch before they go back onto the smoker. Alright, here's the finished product. They look good, they smell really good. So I think our total cook time was about 4.5 hours from start to finish, which for ribs I would call pretty typical. Get them cut up here and we'll be ready to eat.